This is Jolt Your Career with Tegan Bertos, the podcast for executives who aren't just looking for a job, they're crafting what's next. You won't find old school advice that doesn't work here, just bold conversations with leaders who have made game-changing moves and straight talk from people who have sat on every side of the hiring table. Whether you're confidentially exploring your next move or finding the job search harder than expected, this podcast is your unfair advantage. All right, let's be real. Some people play it safe. And then there's my guest today who looked at the rule book and said, cute, but no thanks. She didn't just leave her comfort zone. She left an entire country, from communist Bulgaria to Yale MBA to seeing Wall Street in her horizon to transforming entire industries. Katie has made Reinvention her edge, and trust me, she is not done yet. This is a story about put me in, coach, when life throws you the hard stuff, about rewriting your own playbook, and about proving that where you start has nothing to do with how far you go. Katie, welcome to the show.
Tegan, so happy to be here with you. Thank you for the introduction.
Yes, oh my gosh. When we first chatted and I heard about your story, I knew I had to have you on the podcast. So please share with our listeners your story, and then we'll get into all the tips and tricks that you have for other emerging executives.
Thank you, Tegan. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my story and some of the lessons I've learned along the way. Your listeners are probably hearing my accent. I was born and raised in Bulgaria, and like you said, in communist Bulgaria. And one of the things that I knew early on is that I wanted to live overseas. I wanted to live in somewhere in Western Europe or somewhere in the United States, but I didn't know if it was going to be possible for me because I didn't have role models ahead of me who were doing that, not many anyway. And I just didn't know how I was going to come up with the plan and the information and the resources and the preparation. But I remember going to a grocery store and one cold winter evening in my small town, and I come from a beautiful town in the Bulgarian mountains near the border with Greece. And I looked around and there was barely anything there on the shelves of that grocery store. And at that time, I had an epiphany and I knew that I didn't want to live like this. Nobody should live like this, but I certainly wanted to do my best so I could get out of my current environment. And I don't want to say that my environment was bad and terrible because I had an amazing upbringing, family that loved me, great friends, great educational opportunities. But Bulgaria was struggling economically and there were lots of roadblocks and challenges. And I knew that life was better somewhere else. And so that kind of was the idea behind me trying to get out of living in Bulgaria and move. And of course, my dream was to pursue my American dream story. And I didn't know at that time it was my American dream. I call it now my American dream story, which I'm writing. But fast forward a few years later, I realized my only way to do that is through education and getting a scholarship. And so I spent a few years working pretty hard and getting myself educated. And I was very fortunate to get a scholarship. When I turned 18, I boarded my very first airplane and I took 3 connecting flights to come to the United States. I arrived the night before school started and I was here to build my American dream. And I have to tell you, I was nervous. I was scared. My nails turned blue and my lips were blue. But I was sitting on the plane ride and there was a gentleman next to me. He was about 20 years older than me. And he had an immigrant story. He was from a different part of the world. And he had come and he had become an engineer and he had done so well. And he told me, don't worry, this is the place to be. You're going to America. You can make your dreams come true. And I know it's a cliche, but it has been true for me. So I went to college, I graduated, I moved to New York. And in New York, I took a bus tour and I traveled around on top of a double decker. And when we passed around Wall Street area, I said, one day I want to work here. But it was a very fortunate circumstance for me at the time, because I was Eastern European and one of the banks there needed someone who spoke Bulgarian and Russian. 27 days after my trip on the bus tour, I landed a job at Citibank on 111 Wall Street, my very first after college job working with the Eastern European financial institutions. So I did that for a while and I loved it and I learned a lot and I made some good friends, but I knew that wasn't enough for me and I wanted to go to graduate school. So I decided I have a good job. I'm not going to quit this job. And I decided to go to grad school at night. I applied, I got in, I did one semester. And it wasn't what I wanted. I really wanted the full experience. I wanted to have time. I wanted to go to a top school where I can make friends and build my network. And so I said, I'm actually going to quit this job and I'm going to go to any school that would accept me as long as it's a top school, hoping that they would accept me. And again, a lot of it has been luck and fortune and circumstances. And I was able to get into a number of good schools. And I ended up at Yale, but this is how I ended up there. NYU gave me a scholarship, New York University. And being a Bulgarian girl who is focused on her scholarship, I couldn't afford going to school very much. I said, I can't pass up a scholarship at NYU. So this is where I'm going to go to school, but I am just going to spend one weekend visiting New Haven and Yale, and I want to see what I would be missing by not going there. So I took a chance. I went to New Haven and I fell in love with the campus and the people and met amazing people this weekend who showed me around. And I said, I can't pass this opportunity. This is where I'm meant to go to school. This is where I'm going. And it was one of the best experiences of my life. I loved my learning. I made so many friends and it propelled me into kind of the career and the opportunities and opened many doors afterwards. So I graduated. I started a job after Yale. It's easy to get a good job, or it was easy to get a good job at that time. And I chose to go to work at the S&P Global, which is one of the top financial services companies in New York, where I spent a number of years doing many different jobs. And then a few years ago, I had an opportunity to leave S&P and join a company that's very fast growing in an industry that's not financial services, it's insurance, but they're tangentially related. So I switched and I have been here with my current company, MSI, 3 years. And it's been a fantastic ride, great problems that we're solving, fast growth, and really cool clients and colleagues. So that's my story. And along the way, I learned many things. I reinvented myself many times. I got married. I have 2 kids and my baby, my Cavapoo Flynn, my puppy. And it's been a fun ride, and I'm still writing my American dream story.
I love it. You have experienced so much and so many different crossroads where you ultimately ended up choosing to reinvent and to take maybe a more challenging path versus a traditional path. Now, so many people are petrified of doing that. So, what is it just how you were raised, or is it just something innately about you that made you take that other path to reinvent and to take the hard road? Or where do you think this fear comes in? Why are so many people afraid to do what you've been able to do over and over again?
I think the fear is natural and we all have it and we all face it. And I would be lying if I said that I'm not fearful as I take new roles. And if I'm trying to do new things, the fear is still there and being uncomfortable. I think for me, it started with a very strong desire. And Nietzsche says when you have a why, a strong why, you can withstand almost anything. I am paraphrasing the quote, but I think I started with a strong why and a strong desire to come here. And I knew in the United States as an immigrant, first gen, without a support and a support system and family, it was going to require a lot of me. So I think the strong desire and the expectations that this is not going to be an easy road. I will have to figure things out and I will have to tweak things and I will have to ask for advice and help along the way. I think those three things helped me, gave me the comfort that I needed to keep pushing and to try to reinvent myself? Is it the personality? Is it upbringing? I think it's neither of those. I think it's mostly a decision that we make. And it does require a certain level of discipline, and it does require a certain level of leaning into your flexibility. And it also requires surrounding yourself with people who are constantly reinventing themselves. And a lot of my best lessons are just learning from others and copying what they do and adopting some of their beliefs and some of their attitudes and some of the way they execute and do things.
I couldn't agree more. Surrounding yourself with people who have done it makes it so much easier to believe that you can do it too, which is partially why I invited you on, because so many of us have limiting beliefs, and limiting beliefs hold us back. And when we're trapped in a perfectly linear career because we're not reinventing, we're not taking risks, it can really come back to bite us. And when I look at some of the top CEOs or startup founders and whatnot, their backgrounds are so diverse. It was never a red flag on them that they changed. If anything, once you hear their story, I was tapped to do this, I was tapped to do this, I was tapped to do this. So I would love to dive into what's been your advantage in having a nonlinear path.
I think that having a linear path is actually the risky path. And having planning your career, it never works out. There's so many variables and so many things that are outside of your control that if you sit down, you map your career for the next 10 years or 15 years, as sometimes we're told in college, just where are you going to see yourself in 10 years? I think that one, it's unrealistic given the pace of change and technology and just the pace of change in society. So it's not even an option. And second, even if you manage to work in a role, and I did stay in a company for a long time, but did many different things, even if you stay in the same role, that's risky because you're not gaining new experience. You're doing the same thing 10 times, 10 years, instead of doing multiple different things and building your skill set, building your relationship, and building your belief in yourself and what your capability is. So I think that's the first mindset shift I would love for our listeners to focus on is the risky path is not reinventing yourself. I don't think we have the luxury in today's day and age not to reinvent ourselves. The fun part is reinventing yourself because it gives you the freedom to do many different things. And as I had to reinvent myself and what I do, I I approached it from the perspective of what am I naturally good at and what am I drawn to? And of course, what are marketable skills that I want to develop in the market so that I'm able to solve these big, hairy problems? I'm able to get tapped for various different roles and jobs. And what is it about fear, reinvention? What is driving it? I think it's different for different people, but primarily it's understanding that this is the less risky and it's the more fun path to live, and that you can trust yourself, that with the help that you have around you, between your friends and in your network and your community and technology that's available, you could figure things out.
Yep.
Most jobs, my mentor says that at some point in your career, there are very few roles that you cannot do, only roles where you need a very specific technical educational license. But everything else, you can pretty much approach them with the belief and the attitude and the desire to solve the problem, and you can figure it out along the way.
I am not surprised that is what your mentor tells you, because in the short amount of time that I have known you, you seem to be relentlessly curious and driven by solving challenges. And so I want to get micro a little bit here. You have made multiple pivots in different organizations through going to school and so on and so forth. When you knew it was time to pivot, what was it that went into that decision? Was it strategic? Was it gut driven? Was it a little bit of both? Because I can't tell you how many ambitious people that I talk to, and sometimes the head is saying one thing and the gut is saying something else. And what do you listen to?
Yeah, and it is a really great question, Tegan. Thank you for asking me because a lot of times my intuition has told me it's time to move on and it's time to leave and it's time to try something new. But I have stayed too long in a certain role. And what I had to learn is that the desire to do something new and the draw and the appeal needs to be stronger than the need for security. I approach things both from a linear logical perspective, but also I rely very heavily on my intuition. It's a big guiding force in my life, and I've always relied on it. So, my first kind of approach is to think about what is on the horizon? What is the possibility? What would I be doing that's new and exciting? And obviously, why I want to do it. Is it's very helpful when the purpose is bigger than myself. It's not just about the money, it's not just about the title, but it's about solving the problems, serving those around you, whether they're customers or clients, and lifting and elevating teams as you learn, as you lift yourself. So when you have a purpose that's bigger than you, it makes that new challenge more appealing, more inviting, and it makes the draw and the pull stronger than the need for security. And I've tried in different ways. In some places I've stayed long, and sometimes when I was going to leave my job at Citibank, I didn't think twice because the pull of going to business school was strong and I was excited and I was dreaming about all the things I was going to do. In other times, when I've been in other roles, I had to really challenge myself and think, okay, my mind and my head is telling me I should stay because this is a great opportunity for me, but my gut is telling me I'm bored. I need to go. I want to try something new. And so in those cases, I have leaned on listening to my intuition and saying, okay, I'm going to take a risk. Taking a risk is something that you're less likely to regret in life. And ultimately, ironically, taking a risk is less risky in our career world now, where people are rewarded for doing different roles and learning different things and trying to solve different problems.
I'm right there with you. I get to work with a lot of brilliant people, and the consistent theme that I've been hearing lately is I shouldn't have stayed this long. I'm becoming irrelevant. Don't have the experience that is required of me now because I never diversified my skill set. But I am curious, has there ever been a time when you made a risk, when you chose to take on that new challenge that didn't work out? And if so, how did you course correct? Because there's so many people who are weighing out different options, the safe option or the risky option. And then there's that fear of, but what if it doesn't work out? And for me, it's okay, let's think about it. What's the worst that can happen? You course correct, and what would that look like?
Yeah.
Have you ever experienced it?
I've experienced it more than one time, multiple times it happens. And I think that's another lesson for the listeners today is go in with the expectation that you will fail. It's not a matter of if you will fail, but there will be times in your career that you will fail. And those are actually your best lessons because you're going to learn the most about yourself, about your strengths, about your community, about your friends when you fail. So expecting a certain level of things not working out, failing, I think for me, that has again given me the impetus that I needed and the strength that I needed to take a risk. I worked on a big project. It was a major modernization, multi-million dollar project I was very excited about. And I thought we are going to have quick success. And in 18 months, we're going to be able to transform this large platform that was used by 1,200 analysts. And I truly believe that we were going to be able to make it happen. I had grossly underestimated not just the technology lift, but the change management, resistance to change, the way people embrace new things, and also the ability of people and the willingness of people to be uncomfortable during a transition. So that project failed. We lost a lot of money. We had to be stopped and rolled back, and we had to redo all of that technology work. And it looked very badly on me because I was a major champion of this project. I learned a lot of things about that, and I learned about myself. So one thing I know is I have energy and I am a little over optimistic. And those skills have, or those traits, they have helped me a lot in life, but sometimes they take me down the wrong path because I get excited and I overestimate how long things are going to take and how excited other people are going to be. And so I now know that, okay, first of all, there are very few career failures that you cannot recover from. So this one I had to change. I stayed with the same company, but I had to change jobs and I had to take another role, which I did. And it slowed me down a little bit and it took me back a little bit, but it wasn't life changing in the long kind of scheme of my career. And what I think the lesson that I learned from that is there are a couple things that I know about myself I need to keep in check. And that's what as I speak with my friends and mentors, I'm like, okay, hold me accountable on this because I know that my opinion maybe is not going to be kind of reality based. So I need you to level check me and help me. And so some of the biggest lessons I have learned are through these challenges and failures. And the other thing I want to tell our listeners is don't judge yourself. You're not going to be successful all the time. Expect failure. And if you fail, pat yourself on the back. You're going to learn. There is such a thing as post traumatic growth and recovering from those failures. It, I hate the word resilience. People use resilience so much. When I am going through a challenge, I don't want to just come back to where I was before. I want to come up stronger. I want to bounce and actually jump up and have this post-traumatic growth, career growth that, when I mentor people, I tell them, embrace the challenge. You're going to grow from it. You're going to learn about yourself and failure is inevitable. You'll deal with it.
So as you're speaking, I can't help but smile because I was thinking, what is the real risk of pivoting then, of reinventing your career, whether that be because you've been personally selected and tapped on the shoulder, or because society has said or technology has said, okay, your role is now obsolete and it's time to do something new. And I've identified a few things. The real risk of pivoting is not learning about yourself, not willing to challenge yourself, not putting yourself in a position to be vulnerable so you can grow. Does anything else come to mind to you? What is the real risk?
I think some people would say that if you don't pivot, you can become a real deep expert in one area and you will build the level of skills and thought leadership and recognition in your area that are very difficult to do if you constantly pivot and reinvent yourself. And I think that there is some truth to that, but for many people, having one long career in an industry where you're an expert is either not possible because industries are changing so much. It's not desirable because it's very boring to be doing the same thing, or it's just not the opportunities don't present themselves. It's not realistic. They don't present themselves that way. I think when you pivot, instead of looking at what you're going to miss out, is to think about, when I reinvent myself, can I build my credibility in the new functional area or in my new industry? How can I accelerate that? And there are certain tips and tricks on becoming an industry expert, on speaking at conferences, at building your network, putting out thought leadership on the various social media that you're active on. And there are many ways that you can actually accelerate and rebrand yourself. And my biggest favorite thing I've learned from all of these pivots is that a lot of times you need industries and companies have experts with deep and narrow expertise. They've been there, they've done it, they know how it's done. What they don't have is people that have been in other different places and they have a broad and horizontal expertise. They're able to connect the dots and bring things from a different experience, different project, different company, different industry, and they're able to solve the problems in a new way. I think the question for our listeners is, are you more likely and better suited to be a very deep expert or a broad expert that's connecting the dots? And I would say for a majority of people, being a broad expert in today's economy may be more beneficial. That's going to be more exciting. It's going to give you new opportunities and it's going to be more fun. But you have to keep, every time you reinvent yourself, it's a deep dive. It's a deep dive into a new functional area. It's a deep dive into a new industry. You have to take time, you have to learn, and it requires a level of investment and discipline that, you probably don't need to do to the same level if you're not constantly pivoting and reinventing yourself.
Oh, that answer was fantastic because it does take work and
Yeah.
not everybody wants to do it. But I feel like by the time you've reached the executive level, you're not scared of work. That's not where the fear is.
And that's
So
why you reach the executive level, because you like it. You like solving the problems. You like doing the work. You like trying new things. And, you are less afraid to fail.
absolutely. So for our listeners, especially those who are stuck in a role they've outgrown, what's the first bold step they can take to open up new possibilities? If our listeners are your mentees, what's your advice?
It's a great question, Tegan. I have a couple different things. It's hard for me to distill to just one thing, but I would say three things that I would advise them to do.
Okay.
First is kind of change the community and the people you're surrounded with, or maybe not replace, but add to this community. Tap into various, whether they're online or in real life, people and communities where they're doing what you want to do. If I felt especially when I was younger, I felt scared and I felt fragile, but I knew that when I surrounded myself with people that had tried different things, kind of could see myself, oh, I could see what they did and how they did it. I can see myself doing that. So the first is expand your community and surround yourself with people who are already doing this. You can do this through mentorship, industry organizations, so many communities there on LinkedIn and otherwise. So that's the first. The second is get very clear. A lot of times, our complaints and being stuck, they tell us what we are lacking in our professional life or even in life outside of our careers and profession. So really examine, what is it that keeps you stuck? Is it the work itself? Is it the leadership? Is it your company? Is it that your industry is more stagnant? And once you get more insights and these kind of glimmers of understanding, what is it exactly that I want to change? Then you can come up with your strategy of what's the most effective way to change. So that's my second. First is the community. Second is really getting deep into what it is that keeps you stuck. And then the third one is to make small steps and make baby steps. And those could be different for different people. It could be as simple as attending a conference in an area that speaks to you and that you're interested in. It could be challenging yourself. And I've done this many times with a buddy or someone that's a friend of mine on, okay, we're going to race. We're learning about this particular topic, or maybe we're racing in terms of our speaking engagements or learning about particular AI capabilities, and making it a game and a fun with a buddy. And let me tell you, some of the buddies, and you always want to get someone that's better than you if you can, because they're going to really stretch you. It's like at the gym. You want to work with someone that's better than you so that you're really trying hard to keep up with them. And a lot of times I have failed. I didn't win, but I went so much further than I would have gone on my own. So that's my third advice is gamify it, work with a buddy, and try to make baby steps. And they'll be different if you're just starting out versus being senior in your career. And try a few different things. Careers are much more about the opportunities that reveal and present themselves to you than a very logical, planned, and a very executed path forward.
I always think that even when you try to make a plan, it's probably not going to happen anyway.
What did they
So it's
say?
got to be a little flexible. And I love your three tips Because no one wants to go about their career alone. Community is so important, and taking intentional steps with an accountability partner can really make the difference. Katie, you have just made it impossible for anyone listening in to hide behind the excuse of this is all I've ever known. You walked away from safety, you rewrote your story more than once, and you didn't wait for a title or permission slip to do it. So for the leaders sitting in the corner offices convincing themselves that it's too late or too risky, it's not. And the truth that Katie shared with us today is that playing it safe is the fastest way to become irrelevant. Bold leaders burn the rule book, build something better, and have the receipts to back it up. So if you've been waiting for a sign, this is it. Reinvent. Not someday. Now, when it's not the perfect time. So Katie, thank you so much for showing us what happens when you stop waiting and start moving.
Thank you, Tegan. It's been so fun to talk to you.
Thanks for listening to Jolt Your Career with Tegan Bartos. If this sparked something or called BS on what's holding you back, share it, subscribe, and connect with me at Jolt Your Career. More real stories, smarter strategies, and zero fluff coming your way, because executive careers don't run on autopilot.